Here, you wanna close up with one about your favorite Pinkie George?
Yeah, I just mentioned him the other day. That's right.
When I said we'll play guess the letter writer, you said, well, no, it's not going to be somebody like Pinkie George, right? And no. But this one I'll tell you is ahead of time because you will remember from the NWA history that Pinkie George is the one who got everybody together in 1948. And the original, what was it, 6 promoters or 7? They signed the NWA charter, right? So technically, Pinkie George started it. And then
He was the first president, right?
he was the first president. And then after a few years, Sam Muchnick in St. Louis. And I know a lot of people are saying, who's Pinkie George? He was the promoter in, goddamn, what was his, help me, his main town? He Kansas City at that time. He was Kansas City at that time. And Sam Muchnick was St. Louis. And later on, obviously, Kansas City would change hands, but St. Louis would remain with Sam Muchnick until he retired. They were always different offices, but they had some of the same owners, operators, bookers, etc. throughout the years. And now, to be fair, Sam Muchnick has been long lauded as, like the last of the old time fair promoters that paid the boys fairly and was level headed and ran the wrestling dynasty of St. Louis. It was one of the strongest markets in North America. His whole 40 years he was in business, blah, blah, blah.
And let me just make a correction because you and I both had the same brain fart. And now I see this. I'm like, oh, yeah, of course. He was the promoter in Des Moines.
Des Moines. That's why I couldn't. Goddamn, I wasn't going to say Kansas City, but you talked me into it. But nevertheless, Des Moines, Iowa and Kansas, two centers of the heartland. But anyway, so as much as people said good things about Sam Muchnick in a wrestling business, you're bound to make some enemies, right? And by the end of the 1950s, Pinkie George had resigned from the National Wrestling Alliance and was involved in testifying or giving testimony at least and background in the antitrust suit that the government had against the National Wrestling Alliance. So this is a letter that Pinkie George apparently wrote, typed out, and sent to all members of the alliance. And in 1959, this is March 1959, there were probably about 35 or 40 of them, right, in the NWA at that period of time.
He'd already fallen out with them by that point too, right?
Yes.
A few years before that.
Yes, and that's why he wrote to all the members of the alliance. And at the top, it's written, Jack, I mailed you one at the Noel House in the hotel in Columbus. Regards, Pinkie. And the title of it is How the National Wrestling Alliance Became the Muchnick and Company Alliance. Gentlemen of the Alliance, in accepting my resignation from the NWA, Muchnick's letter closed with these famous lines. When I go to bed every night, I do so in good conscience. End of quote. Okay, let's review his conscience. Before the trial here, the St. Louis and Kansas City territories merged. During the trial, Mr. Simpson, one of Sam's partners, appeared as a voluntary witness against the alliance and me. As promoter in Topeka, Sonny Myers was a close associate of Sam's. What a farce and sham. During a 3-day recess of the trial, and now this is because, remember, Sonny Myers testified for the government, did he not, as a voluntary witness?
I believe so.
And he was and still would remain a figure in Kansas pro wrestling and Midwest pro wrestling for a while and became a member of the office. During a 3-day recess of the trial, Mr. Conscience called a meeting in St. Louis with all of his St. Louis and KC partners. In this meeting, he said, I don't care about Pinkie George. It's the alliance I want to save. Let him deny this. What alliance was he saving? The Muchnick and Company alliance. It's ironic that Sam's KC partners are taking over towns I used to book. I bet Sam's conscience don't bother him one bit when he cuts up the booking money. The Muchnick Alliance is now booking 4 midget wrestlers recently stolen from Burt Ruby.
Wow.
That's the goddamn greatest line I've ever heard in a letter. I'm thinking, what did the fucking second story man break in at night and fucking put him in a bag? Sam and his employee Bobby Bruns were getting into hot water, so they picked a front man to act as the midget booker. One Mr. Craddock, who has long been associated with Gus Karras. The fact remains that they're being booked throughout the Muchnick Alliance territories. Ruby can sit in Detroit and be consoled by Sam's conscience. So basically, he's mad because they would always, and Lord Littlebrook did this in the 80s, there was always one person in charge of booking the midgets, like there was one person in charge of booking the girls. And apparently, they stole Burt Ruby's midgets.
And by the way, Gus Karras, that's Kansas City.
Yes, Gus Karras is Kansas City. Because I was going to say, well, I'm having a brain fart, and where was Gus? But nevertheless, not long ago, Bruns, who likes to play Secretary of State for Sam, gave Orville Brown an ultimatum. This monopoly is trying to throw Brown out, put him out of the business he built. Again, how ironic. The first 4 people who agreed on the original alliance were Stecker, Clayton, Brown, and myself. It was Brown's insistence that brought Muchnick in. Stecker and Clayton have passed away. I resigned. 1 more to go. How soon? It depends on Muchnick's conscience. Sam's conscience fades very quickly. Morris Siegel has been Sam's best booster. Yet Muchnick once had the gall to try and throw Siegel out. Why? Because Siegel, who was ill, failed to make a board of directors meeting. In the lobby of the hotel, the conscience one was shouting about throwing Morris out until level-headed Mr. Avey calmed him down. Let him try to deny this. Maybe a little speech and few tears now are in order so all can be forgiven. You all remember the humiliation his former partner Martin Thez used to face.
Oh, wow. That's Lou Thesz's dad.
Yes, and when originally Sam Muchnick began his promotion in 1945, Lou had the opposite office, and his father Martin was the promoter and the public president, and they ran opposition to each other for a few months or a few years, and then joined together, but didn't let the public know that the 2 wrestling clubs had joined. And that way they were still operating as 2 separate entities, and they would each do matches every other week. So for years there, the Kiel Auditorium ran weekly, drawing anywhere from 5,000-6,000 people to sellouts every week, like 9 months of the year, and they take off the summer. But it was, a rough go at first, and what turned the tide was when Muchnick was able to get Buddy Rogers to come to work for him. He got his first sellout. He started doing big business, and it brought the Theszes to the bargaining table, and that's another reason. And this was after Rogers had pissed Thez off in 1946 about Lewis. So that was another reason that Thez didn't care for Buddy. But anyway, says you all remember the humiliation Martin Thez used to face, right in open meeting, mind you. The old gentleman couldn't stomach anymore and got out like all Sam's partners do. Everyone knows why Lou Thez laid the load down and got out of St. Louis. Lou's letter from Australia gives you a light on Sam's conscience. Longson was left to face those little snipes. Bill is a nice guy, but...
This is amazing.
I know it to be a fact that he gave Fred Kohler permission to recognize a U.S. champion. When he realized others didn't like the idea and that he exceeded his authority, he pulled the rug from under Kohler. Why, in good conscience, didn't he admit it was his fault?
Wow.
Look at all the trouble that could have been avoided. When Fred Kohler made Vern Gagne the U.S. champion on Chicago network television in the early 50s, he was a serious threat competition to the NWA world champion, Lou Thez. Because of the television coverage he had, people started thinking that Gagne was the the champion instead of the NWA champion Thez. And that's why Gagne only got a few shots and never after the early 50s. And that's the start of heat between Chicago not being a full NWA member, et cetera, et cetera.
That's why he had to become a promoter himself to become world champion. It was never going to happen in the NWA.
Yeah.
Even though you could argue Vern Gagne was certainly as deserving as Dick Hutton.
Oh, good God. See, that was the thing. If Thez dropped it to Hutton because Hutton could really beat him in a shoot. But the thing is, Gagne had been an NCAA champion, and that water was never really tested. So
yeah,
Gagne drew a lot more money as a pro than Dick Hutton ever did, to say the least. Anyway, continuing, what about the poor guy from from Carson City? Sam gives him permission to hold a light heavyweight tournament to decide the NWA champion. He had previously given the privilege to Mr. Luteroff, but because Mr. Luteroff was slow, Sam gave Mr. Walker the go-ahead sign. When Luteroff called to his attention that he had been given that right, Sam did a double take. So now the Carson City promoter who had his tournament and champion is without NWA recognition. Sam's territory in partnership with the Kansas City territory and Canadian partners who are safe from the U.S. antitrust laws now comprise an interlocking monopoly that has made the champion and championship their own personal property. All championship matches are held in either Canada or St. Louis. Now remember...
You know what? That's not exactly wrong for that period of time.
Yes, Toronto was a huge market in the 50s, and the NWA champion was... Yeah.
Is this the most negative thing you've ever heard or seen about Sam Muchnick ever, like all at once?
Ever.
This is amazing.
He says, who knows when and where these matches are made? Did you know when the Hutton O'Connor match was made? And remember, they'd given the belt to Whipper Watson. With the presidency in Sam's hand and the power of the championship, he can whip anyone in line. As a matter of fact, it's a blackjack over every member's head. Many who are sick of the situation don't dare resign. Wrestling is their business. As long as the situation exists, I'm going to shout from the rooftops and try to clean it up. Whether Sam wants to admit it or not, capitalized, it was I who was the father of the alliance. As a matter of fact, it was also incorporated here in Iowa with my lawyer, my wife, and I as the incorporators. The alliance was not intended only for the benefit of one man or a small group. It was intended to be a cooperative for the benefit of the whole membership. If I can't clean it up, I'm going to the Justice Department. Someone has to.
Oh, boy.
I don't know what Sam wants out of life. He's a promoter. He gets a big NWA salary, a paid secretary, expenses for travel. He used to give us a lump sum financial statement. This he stopped last year. Why should he? He has the membership where he wants it, and he has the champion in his pocket. I'd like to remind the president that all of us have made mistakes. All of us have said things we wish to take back. All of us sometime or another have blown our tops, but we are not the president. Our actions are unofficial. His are official and are supposed to represent the alliance. For his mistakes, we can all go before the Justice Department. In closing, I would like to ask the president, how rich can you get with 4 little midgets? Why don't you give them back?
Oh my God, what an ending. Give him back.
Give Bert Ruby back his midgets. Oh my God.
This letter, you said, is 59. So when did Fred Kohler take over as NWA president? Was it 60 or 61?
I don't know off the top of my head, but one or the other of those.
Right after this. Wow.
Yeah. But then that fell by the wayside after a few years, and Muchnick was back in and stayed there for about another 10 years.
Whatever happened to Muchnick's files? I don't know if you know that. I don't know what he had. I don't remember Larry Madison saying anything from any of the interviews I heard with him over the years. Did they have anything in the office? I know they had programs, obviously, and stuff, but what about the files?
I don't know what type of files on financial reports, individual shows, how far back they went. I don't know what they had there, and I'm pretty sure that the partners Pat O'Connor didn't really care about preserving anything. Neither did Bob Brown, Bob Geigel. But the bound set of programs that Muchnick had done from his first show as an old newspaper man, he had, he kept one copy of each program for each event. And then after a few years, he would have them bound. I have those because they ended up in Pat O'Connor's basement. And when he died, Harry White from St. Louis told his wife, Julie, I know somebody'd want to buy those. What Larry Matysik said that he was broken up, that they didn't keep, they probably threw them away, was they had, because Muchnick was a sports writer with the newspapers before he started promoting, so he treated it sports-like in a variety of ways. They kept an information card on every wrestler and every show that they had done so they could pull for a TV commentary or for writing in the program. This is the guy's win-loss record in St. Louis. Here in St. Louis, Pat O'Connor beat this guy, drew this guy, lost it, whatever. All the wrestlers. They had all the statistics in card files. And that apparently no longer exists.
Wow, the idea of Pinkie George sent this to all the NWA members.
Well, he did not intend to rejoin at that point, and he didn't. But God damn it, I'll tell you what, it's one thing to, mismanage the title or start a clique and exclude some of the other promoters. But when you start stealing midgets from poor old Bert Ruby, that's just too much.
A lot of people talk about the Sheik and Dick the Bruiser in Detroit. They don't really talk about Bert Ruby's midgets as much as they probably should. They were the key. They were the key to Detroit.
and I know we've thrown another name in, but Bert Ruby, before the days of the Sheik in the 60s, and really before Jim Barnett took over there from what was it, late 50s through 64, Bert Ruby, and actually still he persisted through the 70s, but he had been more of the owner of the territory, the head man. But Bert Ruby was involved in promotion in Michigan, probably since, I would think, shortly after the death of Adam Weissmuller that we talked about earlier in the program. So, and he was the one, Bert Ruby, who broke the Sheik in. Because the Sheik was from the Michigan there, the area, Lansing.
Fascinating.
Anyway, has this been just fascinating as all fuck?
I have really enjoyed it. We could probably do this another 10 hours, so we should probably stop now so we don't go another 10 hours.
That's true. And you may not have liked it, but we liked it more than talking about goddamn ESPN and their fictitious services.
Well, that was AEW Dynamite for this past
Give those midgets back, Tony Khan. All right.